Hi, everybody. I'm Giorgia. Thank you, Ben, for the introduction. So today I'm going to talk about data. How original, right? But I will not be talking about technology. I won't definitely talk about big data. I'll talk about serendipity and human touch in data instead. I'll talk about handcrafted data and even imperfect data. And finally, I'll talk about analog and definitely small data. In my day job, I work as a professional in the data world. I design charts, visualizations, and interfaces that let people access data in a visual way. And I run a design firm that is called Acra that I co-founded 5 years ago. We are designers, data analysts, and software developers working across different industries and creating different kinds of data visualization tools for business and communication purposes. And in my profession, I realized that when it comes to data, a very common approach is to throw technology at the problem to begin with, sometimes without even spending enough time framing the real issue and the real challenge. We have big data, we should use Hadoop or Spark or whatever, which are just instruments. And over the last years, a lot have been done and research around what technology can bring to data, and this is amazing. But I believe that it is the true convergence and hybridization of science and design that can open new perspective. When we work with information, it's so easy to get fascinated by the quantities, the variables, the categories, and it's so easy to lose track of what numbers really mean and what it's really important to display. And the real power of a design approach, if we fully embrace it, is to limit the possibilities and to reconnect numbers to what they stand for, which are people and behaviors. With my company, we work with organizations of different kinds. I'm talking about business, banks, foundations, public institutions. And for them, we do build software and custom analytic platforms. And we do work a lot with technology. But we also every time try to look at any of their data problems using a design approach from a very early stage and using limitations as an asset to bring their users closer to the ideas that are represented by the information. And this is what I want to talk about today. And I'm going to share with you two completely different experiences where self-imposed limitations in a way changed my relationship with data and most of all changed the lenses that I use to look at the data world. The first one is called Friends in Space. Last year, a very particular challenge was posed to my team by this woman, Samantha Cristoforetti. She has been the first Italian woman astronaut, and as you might have guessed already, I'm Italian, by the way. She contacted us before being launched on a 6-month-long expedition to the International Space Station, and she asked us if we wanted to collaborate on some real-time data visualization while she would be in space. How awesome, how much data there will be to visualize, the orbit around her, the number of spacewalk, her Twitter feed visualized on the map, the speed and the position of the ISS, and I could go on hours to list them because the ISS makes plenty of information available to anyone. But much of it is opaque and complex the way scientific data tend to be. A technology-driven approach would have taken us far from anything meaningful, like this is exactly what we didn't want to do and who need that. But still, we're all so compelled to use all of the numbers that we have to show the complexity of and the power of our engines and to display everything that we analyze more altogether. Luckily enough, I have a team of great people, and also the conversations with Samantha before have lunch have been very inspiring. And after a couple of false starts, when we focus on the stream of data, hooking up with the API and so on, we realized that we were looking at the whole thing from the wrong perspective. What both Samantha and us wanted to achieve in the end was a way to make feel her presence through her data, a way to remind people on Earth that in that little box orbiting around the Earth, there was a human being looking for a way to talk to them. So we decided to use limitations as an asset, and we framed just one question to guide our design process. Is it possible to use scientific data to promote very simple and basic human connections? And the idea was already there. In fact, the core idea of Friends in Space is very simple. You log in with your social profile. Here is me. You can see Samantha's real-time position above your head within the trajectory of her current orbit, as well as a map of all of the people around the world that are online on the platform in that moment. Well, it might take you a few seconds before you realize that those little symbols indicate all of the people that right now are online with you on Friends in Space, represented through their location on a map that you can hide and show. As soon as you realize that one of those little dots is you, the fun begins. You click hello, you just click hello, and a simple arc on the map connects you to other people who just said hello from all over the world. You are linked. You're connected with somebody in Japan, in New Zealand, and you actually see that, you feel that. Because the fact that users are able to see themselves on a map, to visualize their position, in a way merges the digital distance between them and Samantha and between each other. And the whole idea is that you are a part of a map of the world that is connecting different people who are feeling the same emotion, strangers who share at least one interest. And if you were lucky enough, you also saw and received the feedback when Samantha was digitally waving back from the ISS, which is pretty spectacular. And to end, all of this connection has been recorded for you in your control room in form of beautiful images like postcards from space. You see, data powers all of that. But in fact, a very simple and human way of connecting people drives all of the experience. And we limited the interaction by design because we really wanted to play with the authentic simplicity of the gesture of waving and saying hello from where you are to other places on Earth and beyond Earth. Through Friends in Space, tens of thousands of people connected with Samantha and between themselves, and the whole experience and the incredibly positive response of its user taught me a very important lesson. Limitations with data are the true way to transform the abstract and the uncountable into something that can be seen, felt, and reconnected to our lives and to our behaviors. The other experience I want to share with you today is definitely more radical in this sense, and it was for me the big data hangover relief. It's a zero-technological, year-long personal project, so a side project, a very laborious and time-consuming one that took out practically all of my weekends and evenings over the past year. It was a collaboration with information designer Stephanie Pozovec. Just a little bit of intro. I am an Italian and I live in New York. She is American and she lives in London. We actually met only a few times in our lives, but last year we decided to work together because we found out that we have so many personal and work similarities. We're both expats in our 30s and so struggling, both only children, struggling to be so far away from our families. We both work with data in a very handcrafted way, as Ben was saying, trying to add a human touch to the world of computing and algorithms. And most of all, we both are obsessed with sketching data, with drawing data. So we decided to challenge ourselves. We would get to know each other through our data and through our drawings with data, of course. And we conceived and started what we call Dear Data, an uncommon kind of correspondence of hand-drawn data postcards across the ocean. So each week since September 2014 and for a year, we would collect our personal data around a shared topic, from our complaints to the interaction with our partners, from the compliments we receive to the sounds of our surrounding, 52 pretexts in form of data to investigate and reveal a particular aspect of ourselves and about our days. At the end of the week, we would then take the time to analyze our information and to create hand-drawn correspondence, hand-drawn data correspondent to each other. Unfold the data postcard that we would send from New York to London and from London to New York. Eventually, the postcards arrive at the other person's address with all of the scuff marks of his journey over the ocean. And we purposely designed the initial constraint for the postcards to form a consistent collection, but also to allow us to experiment more with our weekly data. So the front of the postcards contains no text or explanation at all. It is a hopefully beautiful drawing that one can take just as an illustration if you didn't know that there are data behind. And the back of the postcards contain the address of the other person, of course, the title of the project on the week, and the legend, so how to read our data drawing. And actually, this is interesting. We didn't send each other any digital scan of our postcards, and so we have been both eagerly waiting to get the weekly data portrait of the other person in the mailbox for over a year, and also rediscovering the pleasure of checking the postbox as you get home. It has been a type of slow data, small data, and incredibly analog data transmissions. So, well, yeah, during a time when everybody talks about big data and virtual reality, we, of course, do small data and physical postcards, you know. Well, it doesn't sound very revolutionary, but by removing technology from the equation, we were forced to extend ourselves as designers. Because on the one hand, we've been each forced to invent 52 different visual languages, since hand drawing with data leads to designs that are incredibly customized to the data that you're counting and working with. But also, removing the computer from the equation triggered us to find different ways to look at the data as excuses to sell something about ourselves. In fact, as we gathered our weekly data, the process was definitely more labor-intensive than just deriving standard metrics from technological devices. We conceived our data from the beginning as a personal documentary more than a quantified self-project. Because we here didn't only quantify numbers, we also tried to add qualitative details to our data collection. And this is a very important part of the project for us. For example, the very first week of the year data, we chose a pretty cold and impersonal topic. We didn't know what we were doing. So how many times we check the time in a week? So here is the front of my postcards, and you see that every little symbol represents all of the time that I check the time, order per days and per hours, chronologically. Nothing really complicated here. But in the legend, you also see how I added anecdotal details about those moments. In fact, the different instances of my symbol indicate why I was checking the time. What was I doing? Was I bored? Was I hungry? Was I late? But this is the key part, so giving Stephanie an idea of my days through the pretext of my data collection, something that's not possible if you don't actively add meaning to your tracking. But we can find data also in our minds and in the words we use, and not only in our activities, which is even more compelling if the goal is telling something about yourself through your data. On week 7, we tracked our complaints. And I composed this musical complaints card, borrowing a very literal visual inspiration from the music notation system to show the repetitiveness of my complaints of different time over time, and their pitch, so their loudness. Did I really need to complain? Through the positioning of my complaints notes over the lines of each score. And explaining to Stephanie how to interpret my protest and being very honest about how grumpy I've been in the true spirit of sharing. But we also figured that we can even find data beyond the daily tracking and, for example, make a survey of what we own, and go into our wardrobes with the eyes of the data collector, looking for data even in the way we categorize and classify our garments. Or we can try to use data to become better human beings, at least for a week, and perform acts to be able to report them. Like this week where we purposely smiled to strangers and tracked their reaction, and that was hard. So I'm not going to show you all of 104 postcards. You can find them online if you're interested. But what I wanted to say with that is that over a year, Stephanie and I shared everything about ourselves through the excuse of our data. We truly became friends with our data. And most importantly, we both started to look at data, even in our profession, through different lenses. I'm not suggesting you to start drawing your personal data or to find a pen pal across the ocean. And also, it is, of course, not imaginable that we all hand-drawn data in our daily jobs. Thanks God that we have our software and computers. But experimentations of this kind, where we radically limit ourselves, where we drastically limit our tools and our possibilities, can actually teach us a lot about the perspective we look at all kinds of data from. Because shifting the focus away from technology, we get closer to the real meaning, and only then we should bring technology back in the process. If you think about it, even when we work with big data, the whole point is making it meaningful, contextual. It's all about making it smarter, smaller, understandable. So for sure, data is not only a matter of technology, it's mostly a matter of how we collect, process, and relate with information. It's a matter of how we design the way we look at data. And this is what I would say we should try to shift from this data-driven design, which is pretty common to hear, but somehow implies that design should fit into a limited part of the process, and that should fit within precise boundaries that are defined by data, to something that looks more like this, design-driven data, which means we should design the way we approach, handle, use, analyze, and talk about data. The real power of a design approach is to give us the tools, and not necessarily the technological tools and the formats to reconnect numbers to what they stand for. When we think about data in our lives, we always associate it with more efficiency, more automation. And if I can leave you with one thing today, is that I argue we can absolutely use data to become more human, to connect with ourselves and others at a deeper level, if we design the right ways to do it. Thank you.